The rain hammered the windshield like fists of judgment, each drop a reminder of the words that had chased Jonathan out of Willow Creek 12 years ago. "Don't you dare come back, you abomination." He gripped the steering wheel of his beat-up Ford pickup, knuckles white, as the neon glow of Manhattan's skyline loomed ahead like a false promise of absolution. But tonight, under a sky bruised purple with storm clouds, he wasn't coming home for forgiveness. He was coming to bury secrets that could unravel everything. Jonathan killed the engine outside the old brownstone on the Upper West Side, the one that had once been his prison of polished oak and whispered lies. The family crest etched into the brass knocker mocked him, Harrington Legacy, unbroken. His heart thundered louder than the approaching thunder as he stepped onto the slick sidewalk, the scent of wet concrete and distant hot dog vendors stirring ghosts he'd long tried to outrun. One deep breath, and he rang the bell, knowing the door would open to a war he might not survive. The door creaked open, and there stood his father, Elias Harrington, silver-haired and sharp-suited, eyes narrowing like a hawk spotting prey. "Jonathan," he spat, the name a curse wrapped in silk. "I told you never to darken this threshold again." But before Jonathan could utter a word, a gasp echoed from the hallway. His mother, frail and elegant in her pearl necklace, clutching the banister as if it were her last lifeline. And in that frozen moment, the family empire's cracks spiderwebbed across their faces, pulling him into the storm he'd fled. Part 1. Jonathan's boots echoed on the polished marble foyer floor, each step a betrayal of the boy who'd once tiptoed here in fear. The air inside the Harrington brownstone was thick with the scent of aged leather and regret, the kind that clung to antique furniture like dust on forgotten heirlooms. Elias slammed the door behind him, the sound reverberating like a gavel in a courtroom of ghosts. "What the hell are you doing here?" his father demanded, the same timbre that had shattered Jonathan's world at 18. "I got your letter," Jonathan said, pulling the crumpled envelope from his jacket pocket. It was typed on Harrington Enterprises' letterhead, the one that screamed old money and ironclad control. "Come home. The legacy demands it." No warmth, just a summons from a man who'd disowned him for daring to love another man. Elias's eyes flicked to the paper, then away, as if it burned him. "That was a mistake. My assistant overstepped." Upstairs, the faint clink of crystal glasses hinted at the gathering cousins, aunts, the extended Harrington clan, all buzzing like wasps around a dying hive. Willow Creek wasn't just a sleepy Hudson Valley town anymore. It was the rotten core of a scandal threatening to topple their real estate empire. Whispers of embezzlement, falsified deeds, a whistleblower in the shadows. Jonathan had read the headlines on the drive up from Brooklyn, where he'd scraped by as a freelance photographer, capturing the grit of the city that had both saved and scarred him. His mother, Lydia, descended the stairs like a specter in cream silk, her hand trembling on the rail. "Johnny," she whispered, the childhood nickname a dagger to his gut. She reached for him, but Elias stepped between them, a human barricade of patriarchal fury. "He's not welcome, LYD. Not after what he did to this family." What he did. Jonathan's laugh was bitter, echoing off the crystal chandelier. "You mean loving someone you couldn't control? Or admitting I wasn't the straight arrow son you ordered from the catalog?" Lydia's eyes welled, mascara threatening to streak like the rain outside. "Please, Elias. The boys come all this way." She turned to Jonathan, her voice a fragile thread. "Your grandfather's will. It's complicated. The estate in Willow Creek, the company shares, everything's tied up in bloodlines. And with Nathaniel, She faltered, the name hanging like smoke. Nathaniel. The man who'd been Jonathan's anchor through the wreckage. They'd met 6 years ago in a dive bar off Bleecker Street, two lost souls nursing whiskeys and wounds. Nathaniel Reyes, with his easy smile and calloused hands from years as a carpenter in Queens, had seen through Jonathan's armor from the first crooked grin. "You're carrying the weight of a whole damn dynasty on those shoulders," he'd said that night, tracing the Harrington crest tattoo Jonathan had inked over his heart as a fuck you to his father. Their love had been quiet at first, stolen weekends in Nathaniel's tiny apartment, bodies tangled in sheets that smelled of sawdust and fresh coffee. Then fierce, a rebellion against the world that had tried to break them both. But Nathaniel wasn't here now. He'd begged Jonathan not to go. That family's poison, John. Promising to return before the city swallowed him whole. Now, standing in this mausoleum of a home, he wondered if he'd lied. Elias poured scotch from a decanter that probably cost more than Jonathan's yearly rent, shoving a glass into his son's hand. "Drink. Then get out." But Lydia pulled Jonathan toward the drawing room, where the family waited like jurors in a trial. The room was a shrine to excess. Oil portraits of stern Harrington men glaring from gilded frames, a grand piano gathering dust, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing the storm-lashed streets of Manhattan. Cousin Beatrice, sharp-featured and sharper-tongued, rose first. "Well, if it isn't the prodigal queer." Laughter rippled, nervous and edged with malice. Uncle Harlan, red-faced from too many pre-dinner gins, muttered about family values. But it was Aunt Vivian, Elias's sister, who cut deepest. She'd been the one to find Jonathan and his high school boyfriend in the boathouse that fateful summer, her scream echoing across the Hudson like a siren's wail. "You bring shame on us all," she'd hissed then, and now her eyes gleamed with the same zealot fire. Jonathan set the untouched scotch on a side table, the clink loud in the sudden hush. "I'm not here for tea and recriminations. Grandfather's will mentioned contingencies. Bloodlines, you said." "Mother." Lydia nodded, sinking into a velvet armchair. "Your grandfather. He always suspected. About you. He left a codicil. If the direct line fails, meaning Elias and I have no other heirs, the estate passes to you. But only if you reconcile. Reconcile." The word tasted like ash. Elias barked a laugh. "Over my dead body." Thunder cracked outside, shaking the windows, as if the heavens agreed. Jonathan's phone buzzed in his pocket. Nathaniel. Probably. His text a lifeline. "Miss you already. Don't let them win." He silenced it, steeling himself. The real estate scandal wasn't just tabloid fodder. It was a noose tightening around the family's neck. A former partner, Victor Lang, was suing for millions, claiming Elias had cooked the books on a luxury condo development in Willow Creek. If the case went south, the Harrington name would be mud, the brownstone sold to the highest bidder. And Jonathan? He held the key. Not just the will, but evidence emails from his teen years, when he'd hacked into Elias's computer out of spite, uncovering the first threads of fraud. Files buried on a USB drive in his Brooklyn studio, proof that could sink or save them. "I know about the Willow Creek deal," Jonathan said quietly, the room freezing. "The kickbacks. The offshore accounts. Victor Lang isn't bluffing, he's got copies." Elias's face drained of color, the patriarch reduced to a cornered animal. "How?" But Jonathan didn't answer. Instead, he met his father's gaze, the boy who'd once cowered now standing tall. You warned me never to return. But here I am. And I'm the only one who can fix this. The family erupted, accusations flying like shrapnel. Beatrice called him a blackmailer. Harlan threatened to call the cops. Lydia wept silently, her hand reaching for Elias's, who recoiled as if burned. Through it all, Jonathan felt the weight of Nathaniel's absence like a phantom limb. That night, as the storm raged, he retreated to the guest room, his old bedroom, stripped of posters and personality, now a sterile cage. He lay on the too-firm mattress, scrolling through photos of Nathaniel, them at Coney Island, laughing against the cyclone's shadow, Nathaniel's strong arms wrapped around him during a blackout in the village. I love you, the last text read. Come home to me. Sleep evaded him, chased by memories. The coming-out dinner, Elias's fork clattering to the plate, his roar, "This ends now. Pack your bags." The drive south in a borrowed car, rain blurring the rear view, Willow Creek fading like a bad dream. New York had been his salvation, gritty, unapologetic, where love wasn't a sin but a spark in the dark. Nathaniel had fanned that flame, teaching him to build instead of break. But now, back in the lion's den, Jonathan wondered if he could wield the evidence without becoming the monster they accused him of being. Dawn broke gray and sodden, coffee brewing in the kitchen like a truce. Lydia found him there, staring at the Hudson through fogged windows. He loves you, you know, she said softly, sliding a plate of eggs his way. Jonathan arched a brow. Elias? Doubt it. She shook her head. Your grandfather. He saw the fire in you, even when Elias tried to snuff it out. That's why the codicil. He wanted you to fight for this family, not despite who you are, but because of it. The words landed like balm on old wounds. For the first time, Jonathan saw the fractures in his mother. The pill bottles hidden in drawers, the way she flinched at Elias's raised voice. What about you, Mom? You fought for him, but who fights for you? She smiled sadly, touching his hand. Maybe it's time we all did. The day unfolded in tense negotiations. Lawyers on speakerphone, documents shuffled like guilty cards. Elias grudgingly included Jonathan in the strategy session, his barbs dulled by desperation. Don't think this changes anything, he muttered as they pored over ledgers in the study. Jonathan nodded, but inside, a seed of something dangerous sprouted. Hope, laced with the thrill of power. By evening, the family dispersed, leaving Jonathan alone with his thoughts and a bottle of Elias's bourbon. He stepped onto the fire escape, the city humming below like a beast sated after the storm. His phone lit up, Nathaniel's FaceTime, his face filling the screen, tired but beautiful in the warm light of their apartment. How bad is it? Nathaniel asked, voice rough with worry. Like walking into a Tarantino flick, Jonathan replied, forcing a grin. But I'm holding my own. Nathaniel's eyes searched his, seeing the cracks. You don't have to do this alone, John. Say the word, and I'll be on the next train. The offer hung, tempting. Jonathan traced the screen with his thumb, imagining Nathaniel's touch. I miss you. God, I miss you. Their conversation drifted to safer shores. Nathaniel's latest carpentry project, a reclaimed wood headboard for a client in Soho. Jonathan's unfinished photo series on queer elders in the village. Laughter bubbled up, easing the knot in his chest. Remember that time in Fire Island? Nathaniel teased, his voice dropping low. Waves crashing, sand in places sand shouldn't be. Heat flushed Jonathan's skin, memories flooding, salt-kissed skin, urgent kisses under a blanket of stars, the world narrowing to just them. "I'd give anything to be there now," Jonathan murmured. Nathaniel's expression softened. "Then come back. The family's not worth losing yourself." But as the call ended, Jonathan stared at the skyline, the Harrington brownstones shadow long and claiming. He was in too deep now. The evidence on that USB could exonerate Elias. But at what cost? Betrayal simmered, not from his father, but from the boy he'd been, who still craved approval like air. Little did he know, the real storm was just beginning. The next morning brought a fragile ceasefire, the kind forged in boardrooms rather than hearts. Elias had called an emergency meeting at Harrington Enterprises' Midtown office, a glass and steel monolith that screamed untouchable power. Jonathan rode up in the private elevator with his father, the silence between them thicker than the fog rolling off the East River. "This doesn't make us square," Elias said finally, adjusting his cufflinks as if they were armor. Jonathan met his reflection in the mirrored walls. Taller now, broader from years of hauling camera gear through the city's underbelly. "Wouldn't dream of it, Dad. Just here to keep the wolves from your door." The conference room was a war zone of spreadsheets and scowls. Victor Lang's lawyers had upped the ante overnight, demanding a settlement that would gut the company's liquidity. Beatrice paced like a caged panther, her heels clicking accusations. "We need a counter. Something to discredit the bastard." Uncle Harlan puffed on an e-cig, muttering about good old days when deals were sealed with handshakes, not subpoenas. Lydia sat at the head, uncharacteristically composed, her eyes flicking to Jonathan with a plea he couldn't ignore. He'd brought the USB, tucked in his boot like contraband. When the moment came, Elias's voice cracking on a denial of the offshore accounts, Jonathan slid it across the table. "Plug this in." Gasps rippled. Elias hesitated, then complied. Files bloomed on the screen, timestamps matching Victor's claims, but with annotations proving coercion, Victor twisting Elias's arm with threats of his own. "You kept backups?" Elias whispered, edging out suspicion. "Old habit," Jonathan shrugged. "Hacked your system when I was 16. Thought it was funny at the time." The room buzzed with relief, plans shifting like tectonic plates. For a heartbeat, pride flickered in Elias's eyes. Gone so fast Jonathan wondered if he'd imagined it. But as the lawyers drafted countersuits, a text from Nathaniel pierced the bubble, saw the headlines. "You okay?" Jonathan stepped into the hall, thumbs flying. "Better than okay. Might actually fix this mess." Nathaniel's reply was swift. "Proud of you. But don't get cocky, Harringtons play dirty." He wasn't wrong. That afternoon, over lunch at a discreet club in the financial district, oyster towers and whispers, Aunt Vivian cornered Jonathan in the powder room. "Clever boy," she purred, reapplying lipstick the color of fresh blood. "But don't think this buys you a seat at the table. Your lifestyle, it's a liability." Her words slithered under his skin, but he held her gaze. "Liability, or the only thing keeping your precious legacy afloat?" She laughed, a tinkling bell laced with venom. "Touché. But blood's thicker than whatever it is you and that carpenter boy share." Jonathan's fist clenched. He wanted to tell her about the life he'd built, nights of passion that outshone her hollow galas, a love that didn't demand perfection. Instead, he walked away, the club's oak-paneled walls closing in like judgment. Back in Brooklyn that evening, the contrast hit like a gut punch. Nathaniel greeted him at the door of their walk-up, flour-dusted from experimenting with empanadas, his apron tied low on hips that Jonathan knew by heart. "Missed this?" Nathaniel murmured, pulling him into a kiss that tasted of garlic and home. The apartment was chaos. Exposed brick walls lined with Jonathan's prints, Nathaniel's tools scattered like creative shrapnel. They ate on the fire escape, legs dangling over the alley, the city symphony of horns and laughter their soundtrack. "Tell me everything," Nathaniel urged, his hand warm on Jonathan's thigh. So he did the USB's magic, Elias's grudging thaw, Lydia's quiet strength. Nathaniel listened, nodding, his dark eyes reflecting the sunset like polished obsidian. "Sounds like you're winning. But what's the catch?" Jonathan sighed, leaning into him. "The catch is me. Part of me wants to burn it all down, make them pay for the years they stole." Nathaniel cupped his face, thumb brushing stubble. "Then do it. Or don't. But whatever you choose, it's yours, not theirs." Their lovemaking that night was slow, reverent, a reclaiming. Nathaniel's body, solid and scarred from construction sites, moved over Jonathan's with the grace of someone who built worlds with his hands. Whispers in the dark, "You're enough. Always have been." Jonathan arched into him, chasing release, but it was the afterglow, tangled limbs, shared breaths that anchored him. For the first time in days, sleep came easy, Nathaniel's heartbeat a steady drum against his back. But dawn brought betrayal's first whisper. A call from Beatrice at 6 a.m. "Get to the office." Now, Jonathan arrived to chaos. Reporters swarming the lobby, cameras flashing like vultures. Victor Lang had gone nuclear, leaking not just financials but personal dirt. Photos of Elias with a mistress, grainy shots from a Harrington gala where Uncle Harlan had slurred homophobic slurs. And buried in the dregs, a blurry image of a teen Jonathan, arm around his boyfriend, time-stamped from that boathouse night. "They outed you," Beatrice sneered, shoving her phone at him. "Victor's playing hardball. Says the family's rotten to the core, starting with the deviant heir." Elias was apoplectic, pacing the boardroom. "This is your fault. You come back, and suddenly the world's against us." Lydia tried to intervene, but Jonathan saw the shift, eyes darting, blame sharpening like a blade. "My fault? For existing," the accusation hung, but Vivian seized it. "He's right, Elias. The boy's a magnet for scandal. We should cut him loose. Let the will lapse." The room murmured agreement, tide turning. Jonathan's chest tightened, the USB's triumph souring. He stormed out, hailing a cab back to Brooklyn, rain streaking the windows like tears he refused to shed. Nathaniel was at a job site in Red Hook, so Jonathan drowned in silence, poring over the leaks on his laptop. Victor's spin was masterful, the Harringtons as hypocrites, preaching family values while hiding sins. And Jonathan? Collateral damage, the gay son dragged from the closet to discredit them all. By noon, Nathaniel burst through the door, hard hat under arm, face thunderous. "What the hell, John? This everywhere, Gawker." Page 6. He pulled Jonathan up from the couch, enveloping him in a bear hug that smelled of pine and sweat. "I'm so sorry." Jonathan clung, the dam breaking. "They used me." Again, Nathaniel rocked him gently. "Then fight back. You have the evidence, use it to bury Victor, not let him bury you." That night, they plotted by candlelight, power outage from the storm's tail end. Jonathan drafted an anonymous tip to the Times, threading the USB files with context. Victor's coercion, not Elias's greed. Nathaniel added steel. Make it personal. Tell your story. Hours blurred into intimacy. Ideas sparking amid kisses. I love how your mind works, Jonathan breathed, tracing Nathaniel's jaw. Like you're building a case with your heart. Nathaniel grinned, nipping his ear. Only for you. Their passion reignited. Urgent now, Jonathan on top, claiming control, bodies slick and synchronized. Gasps echoed off the walls, a symphony of defiance. Afterward, spent and sated, Nathaniel traced the tattoo over Jonathan's heart. Whatever happens, we're unbreakable. But the next day shattered that illusion. Elias showed up at the apartment unannounced, raincoat dripping on the stoop. We need to talk. Jonathan let him in, Nathaniel hovering protectively in the kitchen. Elias's eyes swept the space, dismissive of the mismatched furniture, the pride flag on the fridge. This phase of yours is costing us everything. Nathaniel bristled, but Jonathan waved him off. Get to the point, Dad. The settlement. Victor's demanding you testify. Swear under oath that Elias fabricated the deals to protect you. Lies. All of it. Elias's face twisted. Refuse, and the family's done. Accept, and we make it right. The will, the shares yours. The offer dangled, poisoned fruit. Jonathan laughed hollowly. Right? As long as I play the villain in your redemption arc. Elias stepped closer, voice dropping. I'm trying here, son. For the legacy. Legacy. The word curdled. Nathaniel interjected, arm around Jonathan's waist. He doesn't owe you shit. Elias's gaze raked over them, disgust flashing. And you, stay out of family business. The door slammed behind him, leaving silence like shrapnel. Jonathan sank to the floor, head in hands. He wants me to perjure myself. Nathaniel knelt, fierce. Then don't. Expose them all. But the pull was there. The boy who'd once craved his father's nod, warring with the man who'd found love in rebellion. That night, sleep fled again. Nathaniel's arms his only tether. Outside, the city pulsed, indifferent to fractured dynasties. As the scandal swelled, alliances cracked. Lydia called, voice breaking, "Don't do it, Johnny. There's another way." But her words drowned in the roar of high-stakes poker, Elias bluffing survival, Vivian scheming shadows. Jonathan teetered, the Harrington noose tightening, Nathaniel's love the rope he clung to. Little did he know, the deepest cut was yet to come. The deposition loomed like a guillotine, scheduled for a sweltering Thursday in a Federal Plaza courtroom that reeked of stale coffee and desperation. Jonathan hadn't slept, haunted by Elias's ultimatum echoing in his skull. Lie for the family, or watch it burn. Nathaniel had taken the day off, shadowing him like a guardian angel with a Brooklyn edge, his presence a quiet storm in the sterile hall. You got this, he murmured, squeezing Jonathan's hand before the doors swallowed him. But as Jonathan took the stand, the weight of 12 lost years pressed down. The bailiff's oath a vow to truth he wasn't sure he could keep. Victor's attorney, a slick weasel in pinstripes named Hargrove, circled like a shark. Mr. Harrington, isn't it true your father covered up financial irregularities to shield you from public scrutiny? Scandal over your personal indiscretions. The courtroom tittered. Flashbulbs popped from the press gallery. Jonathan's mouth went dry, Elias's eyes boring into him from the defense table, pleading and commanding in equal measure. Lydia sat ramrod straight, her pearls a noose of her own. He thought of Nathaniel waiting outside, thumbing through a dog-eared copy of Giovanni's Room, the book that had bridged their worlds. Be brave, his text had read that morning, attached to a photo of them at Pride, rainbows painted on sweat-slicked cheeks. Bravery. Jonathan cleared his throat. No. That's not true. Gasps rippled. Hargrove pounced. But you have access to documents. Documents that prove Victor Lang coerced my father. Jonathan interrupted, voice steady as he slid copies of the USB files across to the judge. The room erupted, objections flying, the gavel a thunderclap. Elias's face cycled through shock to fury, but beneath it, something cracked, gratitude, raw and unadorned. As the hearing adjourned for review, Jonathan stepped into the hall, Nathaniel pulling him into a fierce embrace. Knew you wouldn't fold. They escaped to a hole-in-the-wall diner in Chinatown, steam rising from bowls of wonton soup like whispered secrets. You just nuked the case, Nathaniel said, chopsticks pausing midair. Jonathan shrugged, but his hands shook. Or lit the fuse. Elias won't forgive this. Nathaniel's foot nudged his under the table, a grounding touch. Fuck his forgiveness. You chose truth. That's the win. But victory soured fast. By evening, Vivian's poison had spread. Anonymous leaks to the Post framing Jonathan as the vengeful excommunicant, twisting his testimony into a bid for inheritance. Protests brewed outside the brownstone, picketers chanting Harrington hypocrites, with signs decrying queer scapegoating. Elias barricaded himself in the study, Scotch his sentinel, while Lydia fielded calls from panicked investors. Jonathan returned to the fray at her insistence, the brownstone a fortress under siege. You did the right thing, she said, pressing a cup of chamomile into his hands. But her eyes were hollow, the toll evident in new lines etching her face. Your father. He's breaking. Elias emerged then, gaunt in the lamplight, extending a hand, not for a shake, but a folder. The codicil. Sign it. It's yours. Suspicion flared, but Jonathan took it, flipping through pages thick with legalese. The estate, Willow Creek Manor, shares in the company, a trust fund that could fund lifetimes. Why now? Elias's jaw tightened. Because you're a Harrington. Blood or not, the concession hung, brittle as autumn leaves. For a moment, Jonathan glimpsed the man beneath, the tycoon who'd clawed from nothing, only to armor his heart in prejudice. Nathaniel arrived later, bearing takeout from their favorite taqueria, his presence diffusing the tension. Elias eyed him warily, but offered a beer progress, glacial and grudging. Over greasy carnitas, talk turned tentative. Nathaniel sharing tales of restoring a brownstone in Harlem, Elias grunting approvals. Jonathan watched, heart swelling, as laughter, real, rusty, burbled from his father at a story of Nathaniel's hammer mishap. Sounds like my first deal, Elias admitted. Busted a wall instead of a contract. It was a bridge, rickety but real. That night, Jonathan and Nathaniel claimed the guest room, the city lights painting their skin in neon hues. Think he hates me less? Nathaniel whispered, lips brushing Jonathan's collarbone. Jonathan chuckled, pulling him closer. Give it time. Miracles take nights like this, their bodies intertwined, slow and exploratory, fingers mapping scars, breaths sinking like heartbeats. Nathaniel's moans were soft pleas, Jonathan's responses vows, the bed a sanctuary amid the chaos. But dawn delivered the blade. A courier at the door. Divorce papers for Lydia and Elias, filed by her but spurred by Vivian's machinations. Leaked mistress photos twisted into irreparable rift. "She's leaving me," Elias rasped over the phone, voice unraveling. "Because of you. Because I couldn't." He trailed off, the unsaid "accept you" a chasm. Jonathan raced to the brownstone, finding Lydia packing in the foyer, suitcases like soldiers at attention. "Mom, don't." She turned, tears carving rivers. "It's not you, Johnny. It's us. The lies we've lived." Elias burst in, wild-eyed. "LYD, please. For the family." She laughed bitterly. "What family? One that disowns its own." The argument escalated, Elias pleading, Lydia resolute until Vivian slithered in, feigning concern. "This is what comes of letting him back," she hissed to Elias, nodding at Jonathan. The boy's curse, the accusation ignited. Elias whirled on her. "Enough," Jonathan saved us. "Your schemes nearly destroyed everything." Vivian's mask cracked, venom spilling. "Saved? By dragging our dirt into the light? I did what I had to, for the legacy." Revelation dawned. The leaks, the framing, it was her, protecting her stake, pitting son against father. Chaos reigned, Lydia fleeing to a hotel, Elias collapsing into a chair, clutching his chest. Paramedics swarmed, the brownstone's grandeur mocking the frailty within. Heart attack, minor but warning. Jonathan rode in the ambulance, holding his father's hand, the man who'd rejected him now fragile as paper. "I'm sorry," Elias wheezed in the ER haze. "For everything." Tears stung. "Me too, Dad." Nathaniel met him there, coffee in hand, his solid presence the rock Jonathan leaned on. "We'll get through," he promised, as doctors bustled. But Vivian's shadow loomed, her texts to Beatrice. "Cut the boy out. Now." Betrayal's web tightened, the family fracturing along fault lines Jonathan had only widened. Days blurred in hospital vigils. Lydia returning to Elias's bedside, their hands entwined in tentative reconciliation. Jonathan mediated, the unlikely peacemaker, while Nathaniel anchored him through sleepless nights. Their love deepened in stolen moments, kisses in sterile waiting rooms, Nathaniel's head on Jonathan's lap during catnaps. "You're my home," Jonathan confessed one midnight, the beeps of monitors a lullaby. Yet Vivian plotted. She cornered Jonathan in the hospital cafeteria, voice honeyed poison. "Sign over your shares." For Elias's health. Refusal burned his tongue, but doubt crept. Was he the curse? Nathaniel sensed it, pulling him aside. "Don't let her gaslight you. You're the glue, not the grenade." The climax brewed as Victor's case crumbled under the USB evidence, charges turning on him. But Vivian struck last, forging documents to claim Jonathan's coming out as coerced, invalidating the codicil. Exposed in a blistering board meeting, thanks to Nathaniel's carpenter's eye spotting the fake seals, she crumbled, disgraced and disinherited. In the aftermath, atop the brownstone's rooftop as rain lashed anew, Elias faced Jonathan. "You could have let us rot." Jonathan, Nathaniel at his side, shrugged. "Family's messy. But worth it." Elias nodded, glancing at Nathaniel. "Both of you. Welcome home." Healing began, tentative. Dinners where Elias asked about their lives, Lydia beaming. But the deepest romance was Jonathan and Nathaniel's, forged in fire, unbreakable as the skyline they surveyed. The rooftop garden, once a forgotten eyrie of potted ferns and wrought iron benches, became their confessional under the post-storm sun. Elias leaned on the railing, the city sprawl a humbling tapestry below, his hospital pallor fading like yesterday's bruise. "I was wrong," he said, the admission heavy as the humid air. "About you. About us." Jonathan stood beside him, Nathaniel a step back, respectful but unyielding. The wind tugged at their clothes, carrying the faint brine of the Hudson, a reminder that some rivers ran too deep to dam. It wasn't absolution, not yet. Elias's apology unfolded in fits, memories of his own father, a steel mill foreman who'd beaten weakness out of him with a belt and Bible verses. "I thought legacy meant perfection. Turns out, it's endurance." He turned to Nathaniel, extending a hand. "Thank you for standing by him when I couldn't." The clasp was firm, electric, a bridge over the chasm. Nathaniel nodded, his carpenter's grip steady. "Family's what you build, sir, not what you're born into." Elias's laugh was rusty, genuine. "Call me Elias." The moment stretched, fragile as spun glass, until Lydia joined them, a picnic basket in hand, cheeses, baguette, the simple fare of second chances. They ate in companionable silence, the skyline glittering like scattered diamonds, Manhattan's pulse sinking with their thawing hearts. But scars lingered. Vivian's exile was swift, banished to a distant cousin's estate in the Hamptons, her shares dissolved in a cloud of legal smoke. Beatrice, complicit but repentant, offered amends, a partnership in the company's green initiatives, Willow Creek reimagined as eco-housing. "You always saw the potential in that old town," she said over coffee. Her edge softened. Jonathan accepted, warily, the past a shadow he refused to let eclipse the future. Nights with Nathaniel were sacraments now, their Brooklyn haven a counterpoint to the brownstone's grandeur. One evening, as summer heat clung like a lover, they danced in the living room to Coltrane's saxophone, bodies swaying to rhythms only they knew. "Remember our first dance?" Nathaniel murmured, hands low on Jonathan's hips. A wedding in the village park, impromptu under string lights, friends cheering as they vowed forever. Jonathan pulled back, eyes shining. "How could I forget? You in that linen shirt, looking like sin wrapped in salvation." Laughter bubbled, dissolving into kisses, deep, devouring. They tumbled to the rug, clothes shedding like old skins, Nathaniel's mouth charting paths of fire down Jonathan's chest. "I want you," he growled, voice gravel and need. Jonathan yielded, then claimed, their union a tempest of gasps and grips, release crashing like waves on Fire Island shores. In the quiet after, sweat cooled and sated, Nathaniel traced lazy circles on Jonathan's back. "Marry me." For real this time, the proposal hung, not a question but a certainty. Jonathan's heart swelled. Yes, 1,000 times. They planned in whispers, nothing lavish, just them, the city, vows etched in starlight. Yet conflict simmered. Elias's recovery demanded changes. Therapy sessions where Jonathan joined, unearthing buried shames. "I pushed you away because I feared myself," Elias confessed one rainy afternoon in the therapist's Park Avenue office, rain pattering on leaded windows like impatient fingers. Jonathan listened, anger ebbing into empathy. Fear's a hell of a teacher. But love's better. Lydia blossomed too, volunteering at a queer youth center in Chelsea. Her pearls traded for rainbow pins. I should have fought harder, she told Jonathan over tea at a midtown cafe, steam curling like secrets. For you, he squeezed her hand. You're fighting now. That's enough. The Willow Creek return was a pilgrimage. The manor a time capsule of creaking floors and Hudson views. Elias deeded it jointly, Jonathan and Nathaniel, stewards of rebirth. They arrived in autumn, leaves aflame, the air crisp with cider and change. Renovations began. Nathaniel's hammer breathing life into walls, Jonathan's lens capturing the transformation, before shots of decay, afters of hope. But betrayal's echo lingered in a midnight call from an unknown number. Victor Lang, from a low-security cell, his voice oily through static. You think you won? I've got more. On your pretty boy. Photos arrived via encrypted link. Nathaniel, years ago, in a Queen's bar brawl self-defense against a homophobic drunk, but spun as aggression. Pay up, or it hits the wires. Rage boiled. Jonathan confronted Nathaniel at dawn. The image is searing. Why didn't you tell me? Nathaniel's face crumpled. It was before us. Didn't want to drag you into my mess. Vulnerability cracked him open. The foster kid who'd fought for every scrap of stability. Scars hidden under ink and muscle. Jonathan pulled him close. No more secrets. We're in this together. They traced the leak. Vivian, from her Hamptons exile, feeding Victor scraps for a cut of his settlement dreams. The confrontation was volcanic. Jonathan storming her waterfront mansion, Nathaniel at his flank. You never stop, do you? He roared, slamming the photos down. Vivian, gin-flushed and defiant, sneered. Protecting the family. From him, she jabbed at Nathaniel. A thug with a grudge. Nathaniel's voice was ice. Call me that again, and I'll show you a grudge. But Jonathan stepped in. Voice steel. Family isn't blood or ledgers. It's choice. And I choose him. They walked out, leaving Vivian to her mirrors and malice. The doors slam a finality. Back in Willow Creek, catharsis unfolded. Elias arrived unbidden, toolbox in hand, his first swing at a nail in decades. Thought I'd help, he grunted, sweat beading as he and Nathaniel framed a new porch. Laughter rang, Elias's mallet mishap mirroring Nathaniel's tales. Lydia and Jonathan painted, brushes dipping into blues like the river, stories flowing freer than wine at dinner. Romance wove through it all. Nathaniel proposing formally on the manor's dock at sunset, ring a hammered silver band he'd crafted himself. With this, I build our forever. Jonathan's yes was a sob, their kiss sealing against the lapping water, the Hudson witness to redemption. Yet drama peaked in a nor'easter's fury. Winds howled, uprooting oaks, the manor shuddering like a ship in gale. Power failed. They huddled by fireplace, Elias recounting boyhood storms, Nathaniel sharing barrio tales from his abuela. As dawn broke, a tree crashed through the boathouse, the same where Jonathan's secret had shattered. Clearing debris, Elias unearthed an old trunk, letters from his youth, to a forbidden love, a sailor lost at sea. I never told anyone, he admitted, voice breaking. Feared it'd make me weak. Jonathan's hand on his shoulder. It makes you human, Dad. Tears fell, shared, the storm's rage yielding to rainbow arcs. Nathaniel pulled Jonathan aside, their embrace fierce. See, even old wounds heal. The family reformed. Not unbroken but resilient. Thanksgivings blending Harrington silver with Reyes spices. Christmases in the city with pride flags on the tree. Jonathan's photos debuted in a Soho gallery. Dynasties of the Heart, portraits of fractured loves mending. Critics raved. Elias bought the first print, hanging it in the brownstone. But the deepest bond was Jonathan and Nathaniel's. Wedding in Willow Creek's chapel. Vows echoing off rafters they'd restored. Elias walked Jonathan down the aisle, eyes misty. "Proud," he whispered. The reception spilled to the lawn. Stars wheeling overhead. Dances blending waltzes with salsa spins. In quiet moments, Jonathan traced Nathaniel's wedding band. "We saved them," he murmured. Nathaniel smiled, pulling him close. "No. We saved us." Winter cloaked Willow Creek in a hush of snow-dusted pines, the manor aglow with strings of lights that pierced the longest nights like defiant stars. The wedding had been 6 months past, but its echoes lingered, a scrapbook of candids on the mantel, Nathaniel's ring catching firelight as he sketched blueprints for the community's new rec center. Jonathan watched from the kitchen island, coffee steaming, his lens idle for once. Peace suited them, this life woven from reclaimed wood and rediscovered grace. Elias and Lydia split winters between the city and the valley, their marriage reborn in counseling's forge, date nights at jazz clubs, hands clasped without pretense. "We're learning," Lydia confided over mulled wine one eve, her laughter lighter than Jonathan remembered. Elias, softer around the edges, took up woodworking under Nathaniel's tutelage, his lathe turning gnarled branches into bowls that held more than soup, stories of surrender. The company thrived. Scandals alchemized into transparency, Harrington Enterprises pioneering ethical developments, Willow Creek a model of sustainable living. Beatrice helmed the nonprofit arm, her barbs traded for passion. "Who knew redemption felt this good?" she quipped at a gala, clinking glasses with Jonathan. Vivian faded to footnotes, her Hampton's exile a self-imposed purgatory. Occasional cards bearing stiff apologies Jonathan filed without reply. Yet humanity's thread pulled taut in unexpected ways. Spring brought Elias's diagnosis, prostate cancer, early but insistent. The word landed like frost on bloom. Family gathering in the brownstone sunroom, daffodils nodding outside like silent sentinels. Treatable, the oncologist assured, but fear shadowed eyes. Jonathan's hand found Nathaniel's under the table, their squeeze a pact renewed. Vigils became ritual, chemo days in the city, Nathaniel driving, his playlist of Springsteen and Selena a bomb. Elias, bald and wry, joked through nausea. "Bald looks good on me," suits the tycoon vibe, laughter masked tremors, but nights cracked open vulnerabilities. One, post-treatment, Elias pulled Jonathan aside on the balcony. "If I don't beat this, promise you'll carry it forward." "Not the empire, the heart." Jonathan's throat tightened. "You will beat it." "But yeah. With Nat. With Mom. We're unbreakable now." Elias nodded, clapping his shoulder. "You made us that way, son." Nathaniel's support was the keel. Quiet strength. Meals prepped with care. Long walks along the Hudson where they debrief in murmurs. Their love evolved. Deeper waters. Lazy Sundays in bed. Reading aloud from Baldwin. Bodies entwined in lazy affirmation. "You're my anchor," Jonathan breathed one dawn, Nathaniel's fingers in his hair. "And you're my sail," came the reply, kiss sealing the metaphor. Drama crested in summer's heat wave, A relapse scare, fever spiking. Elias rushed to the ER. The drive was a blur. Jonathan white-knuckled, Nathaniel's hand on his knee. Breathe. One storm at a time. Tests cleared it. Infection, not cancer's claw. Relief flooded, but the brush with abyss-sharpened edges. Back at the manor, a barbecue sealed the scare, ribs smoking, laughter loud, the family whole under fireflies' glow. Elias raised a toast, voice steady, to second acts. And the men who write them, eyes met, Jonathan and Nathaniel, the architects. Later, by the boathouse rebuilt, a guest suite now, they made love under moonlight, the Hudsons whisper their chorus. Urgent, tender, Nathaniel's thrusts a claim, Jonathan's cries a release. Forever, they gasped in unison, bodies arching to the stars. Autumn harvested bounty, Elias in remission, ringside at Jonathan's next exhibit, a series on queer families, raw and radiant. Your mother's idea, he grumbled, but pride gleamed. Lydia curated, beaming as collectors vied. Nathaniel's carpentry firm expanded, mentoring at-risk youth, his hands shaping futures. Winter circled back, snow blanketing the manor in mercy. Christmas Eve, the family gathered, Harlan thawed with eggnog tales, Beatrice gifting tools to Nathaniel. Gifts exchanged. A pocket knife from Elias, engraved endure. Jonathan's photo of them all, framed in reclaimed oak Nathaniel carved. As midnight tolled, Jonathan and Nathaniel slipped to the dock, skates laced for the frozen river. Gliding under aurora veils, rare southern lights, they spun, breathless. This is it, Jonathan said, pulling Nathaniel close. The happy ever after, Nathaniel's grin flashed. Damn right. With plot twists and all. But the story's humanism lay in the unsaid. No tidy bows, just persistence. Elias's checkups loomed. Vivian's silence a ghost. Old wounds aching in rain. Yet love, fierce, chosen outshone. Jonathan, once warned away, had returned not as savior but kin, weaving a tapestry richer for its tears. In the new year, atop the rooftop where storms had raged, they watched dawn gild the skyline. Nathaniel's arm around him, Elias and Lydia below, coffee steaming. To us, Jonathan toasted. Glasses clinked, echoes of hooks that had pulled them from abyss, rain-fisted windshields, slammed doors, rooftop reckonings. The legacy endured, not in stone, but souls. And in that American dream, fractured yet fierce, they found grace.